Robert Gioia began working as a third-generation leader in the family's Gioia Macaroni Company before establishing a career in community service and the philanthropic sector that has benefited the entire Western New York community.
I've known Robert for most of my life because our families lived on the same street when I was about 10 years old. But he was a few years older, and I didn't get to know him as well then as I did later when our paths crossed. First in the food industry, we both were very active in local companies that were involved in food. And then, later on in this community work, which is something that I think is Robert's greatest legacy.
As time goes on, I think we'll appreciate more and more of what he has done. As you mentioned, from the airport to Canal side to Great Lakes Health, Oishei Children's Health. You start naming everything that Robert's played a role in, and most of those has been a leading role, by the way.
As the chair of the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority, Robert was instrumental in the construction of the $120 million Buffalo Niagara International Airport, the realignment of the region's healthcare resources, and the development of Buffalo's waterfront.
I mean, whether you look at the airport, which how long did that go on, trying to build an airport? The hospitals, when he became involved in merging the hospitals into Kaleida and working with ECMC to try to make these hospitals work together, which in the past had always been a big problem.
And it was at a time when ECMC and Kaleida were the Hatfields and the McCoys. And I was on Team ECMC at the time, and Robert was brought in as a community leader. And Robert kept us on track with that, making our decisions, not just best for ECMC or Buffalo General or Kaleida, what have you, but really what was best for this community.
He's just had such a big impact. It's hard to think back to what the old airport used to be, but it was a drag on what people thought of when they came to this area. And the waterfront was similar a decade ago. It wasn't that long ago that none of this was here. And so he's had a huge influence, across the board for decades.
Robert has served in leadership roles across the region and has been integral in the success of numerous organizations, including the Darwin Martin House, the BPO, Nichols School, and the Erie Canal Harbor Development Corporation. But it is his dedication and work as the president of the John R. Oishei Foundation that has made an immeasurable impact on the community.
It was obvious very early on that this was a very natural thing for Robert to be doing. He has an incredibly generous heart. He believes very strongly in this community, and I think he's always lived his life in a way to make sure that this community grows and gets better for all the people who live here.
He is as emotionally invested in this as anybody, and I think that that's something that a lot of people don't understand, that this is not just something that Robert does because of his position, his status, whatever it is. He's doing this because he believes it.
What Robert has been able to do is to work with a really talented staff to build an organization that just builds capabilities, and it's been instrumental in developing leaders and governance and overall capabilities in the nonprofit ecosystem in Western New York.
In addition to leading the development of the foundation, Robert has also been an advocate and promoter of the Foundation's diversity, equity, and inclusion work, exemplified by the Foundation's development of programs supporting nonprofit leaders of color.
The work that the Oishei Foundation is doing related to diversity, equity, inclusion is part of the DNA of this foundation. Some of our major efforts are creating a fellowship for leaders of color in the nonprofit sector, also to create a space for safe conversations for people who are in the nonprofit sector who are people of color.
Robert Gioia has been named one of the Buffalo News Citizens of the Year 3 times, and he is one of the most well-respected leaders in Western New York.
Robert's integrity is what jumps off the page at me. Just the years of service he's put in, and for everyone to respect him through all of those things that go on, I just find his integrity to be outstanding.
He's kind of like a teddy bear, to be honest. I mean, he's really a heartfelt guy. I think it's interesting that people would think of him as anything other than just an incredibly kind person.
Towards the end of his life, St. Vincent de Paul was honored with the honorific title of Honorary Secretary of State of France because of his great work. In many respects, Robert reminds me of that very same spirit and his life dedication. So it's really our privilege and pleasure to be able to honor Robert for his great work in his life.
For his career of dedication and service to the entire Western New York region, Niagara University is proud to present the Legacy of Service Award to Robert Gioia.